Ladies and gentlemen, we're all set to begin our descent. Please stow your tray tables, bring your seat backs upright, and fasten your seatbelts.
Without this invention, we likely would have crashed before even touching down. However, many airports have designed the end of their runways to be destructible. Why? Precisely for situations like these. Let's take a closer look. It's funny how many people forget to give a thumbs up on the older videos, especially the ones where I've specifically asked for more likes. So here's a gentle reminder. If you forgot to hit like, do it now, before it slips your mind. So a destructible runway. You'd think anything related to aviation should be as sturdy as possible, right? I mean, it's all about keeping hundreds of lives safe. But here's the thing. There's a whole system in place that you can find all over the world, even though most passengers have no clue about it. It all began with Scandinavian Airlines Flight 901 flying from Stockholm to New York. On February 28, 1984, instead of landing at John F. Kennedy International Airport, the plane overran the runway and ended up beyond its limits. Thankfully, all 177 passengers and crew aboard survived, although 12 sustained injuries and the aircraft itself was significantly damaged. The incident happened because the crew failed to keep tabs on the airspeed, relying on automation too much. The avoided disaster led to improvements in runway safety. The Federal Aviation Administration, alongside the U.S. Air Force, agreed to develop a unique airplane arresting system utilizing soft ground. Experiments kicked off in the 1990s, exploring different options such as phenolic foam and cellular cement. But how does it work, anyway? This strip of destructible material stops the plane if it goes beyond the allowed limits. It's like a giant sticker, but on a runway. The first systems of Engineered Materials Arresting Systems, or EMAS, were installed on runways 04R and 22L at New York's John F. Kennedy International Airport in 1996. Since then, the number of installations has steadily increased. It's worth noting that the idea of stopping planes like this didn't just pop up in the 90s. Back then, they already had things like arresting gear, usually steel cables or nets stretched across the runway. They mostly used these on aircraft carriers, and they first used them way back in 1911. The problem is that some of these devices only work with specific kinds of planes, while others, when they bring a plane to a halt, actually damage it. With EMAS, this doesn't happen. When a plane is arrested by the soft ground, it usually comes out without any damage, though it still needs to be checked out. Yet most of the time, the aircraft can take off again after that. Also, such a system means that nearby roads, bridges, houses, and everything else around the runway will be protected. This translates to saved lives, preserved infrastructure, and millions of dollars saved. Actually, a regular airport isn't exactly defenseless against a plane that doesn't stop in time. According to safety rules, there should be safety zones around runways, empty spaces in case of undershooting, overshooting, or excursion from the runway. You might wonder, why bother with extra systems featuring destructible coatings? Well, the thing is, some airports just can't establish a secure area. In the US, these zones are supposed to be up to 500 feet wide and extend 1,000 feet beyond the runway. But some airports simply don't have enough space to create proper safety zones. They just don't fit. And these airports can't expand either, maybe because of natural constraints. Also, many airports in the US were built before the current safety zone standards were adopted in the 1980s, and by then the surrounding areas were already heavily developed. In such cases, installing EMAS at the end of the runway is crucial for enhancing safety. Otherwise, a plane could veer straight into the nearby buildings, the ones that don't allow to create a safe zone. The destructible runway ensures that the airplane can come to a complete stop within a short distance, regardless of the condition of the rest of the runway, speed, or braking quality. Scientists have even figured out that EMAS provides a safety level equivalent to a 1,000-foot zone, meaning it totally meets all the requirements. Nowadays, several companies are in the business of these systems, and their products are pretty similar. Take Zodiac EMAS, for example. They consist of a layer of cellular concrete blocks covered in a protective coating. These blocks are placed right after the paved runway ends. When an airplane rolls onto the blocks, they reliably and predictably crumble under its weight, facilitating swift yet smooth and consistent deceleration. Each lightweight block is anchored to the base with hot asphalt, and the seams between the blocks are then taped at their upper surface to prevent water penetration. The depth of the layer gradually increases with distance from the runway, typically ranging from 10 to 30 inches, ensuring the plane comes to a complete stop. However, just looking at EMAS, you probably wouldn't guess what's inside, so let's take a peek into this safety cake. It really does resemble a cake. Technology owners claim that each installation is unique, even though they employ a similar process and materials. Generally, the bottom of the traditional product consists of a layer of nylon mesh. On top of that, a thick layer of loose cement is laid, followed by a sheet of foam insulation, and finally a plastic cover. In a more environmentally friendly version, recycled glass is used instead. Typically, the EMAS matches the width of the runway and extends for several hundred feet. Oh, and by the way, it's made up of modular components. Basically, the company's factory produces the blocks, which are then transported to the site, where they're placed and joined together using glue or tape. Each block is designed for one-time use. If a plane overruns into the EMAS, damaged blocks can be swapped out without having to fix the entire zone. So even after a plane rolls off the runway, the airport can swiftly restore the original safety level, allowing other planes to roll off the runway. If necessary, of course. The minimum recommended total length for installing EMAS is 590 feet, with at least 390 feet made of lightweight material. Did you know EMAS has a sort of counterpart for trucks on highways? It goes by different names, such as runaway truck ramp. Essentially, it's a long lane packed with sand or gravel connected to the main road. When vehicles have trouble braking, this lane offers a safe way to stop. The gravel slows the vehicle gradually until it stops moving. It's a pretty safe choice, as any injuries that might happen are usually less serious than when crashing into a barrier. And this is a pretty well-known method of stopping planes. Before EMAS came along, they tried to use gravel in the same way. They simply poured gravel beyond the runway, but it only made things worse. Soon enough, they realized that the gravel was getting kicked up by the plane's wheels and could puncture the fuel tanks, leading to fires. And not just any fires, but ones that were really difficult to put out because the leaking fuel would seep into the gravel layer and sustain the flames, even after they appeared to be extinguished. Overall, the idea didn't work out too well. Meanwhile, EMAS is doing its job and doing it well. On December 6, 2018, a Southwest Airlines aircraft heading from Oakland to Burbank veered off the runway during a heavy downpour. It just couldn't grip the surface. But luckily, EMAS was there to save the day. No passengers or crew were harmed. You know, it's crazy to realize that right here in this airport, 18 years before the tragedy that never happened, there was a similar incident. A Southwest Airlines Boeing 737-300 had a rough landing and skidded off the runway, stopping dangerously close to the fueling station. I mean really close. Just a bit more and there could have been a massive explosion, taking the lives of not just the people on the plane, but also bystanders. Can you picture what a fuel station explosion would be like? After that, the airport put in EMAS, and it turned out to be a wise decision. Okay, so the plane is slowing down, everyone's safe and sound. But how exactly does that happen? What does EMAS actually do besides looking like an underground concrete cake and all that? Remember that the system is built from this material that breaks apart quite easily. The landing gear kind of sinks into it as it moves. It's like it's falling in, and the material breaks exactly how you'd expect. Smoothly, but right where the landing gear is. As a result, the plane's velocity decreases quickly because energy is being expended on breaking up concrete blocks and other obstacles. How effective is it? Well, EMAS can stop a plane going up to 70 knots. That's around 80 miles per hour. At first glance, it might seem like planes come in for landing at a much higher speed, around 155 miles per hour, but data from planes that went beyond the runway over a 12-year period shows that about 90% of cases actually happens at speeds of 70 knots or even less, so everything adds up. And that's why it works as it should. Okay, what about the cost? These systems seem impressive, so they're probably not cheap, and, well, they're not. If you do some research, you'll find articles discussing the installation or upgrade of EMAS in certain airports, with costs ranging from around $10 to $12 million. And keep in mind, those articles are a bit dated, so prices have likely gone up since then. Still, despite the high cost, EMAS definitely proves its worth. As of September 11, 2023, there were 21 incidents of planes veering off runways in the USA, and EMAS successfully stopped all 21 planes. So basically, it was 100% effective. They've also figured out that the savings from the initial 11 incidents have hit $1.9 billion already. Once you compare that to the price of just one system, it all makes sense. Plus, studies show it's more cost-effective to install EMAS everywhere than to try other methods and hope for the best. It's pretty clear that putting money into EMAS makes a lot of sense. When it comes to airlines and airports, a runway excursion can really hit them hard in terms of their reputation. Dealing with the financial aftermath of losing an airplane is also a big problem, especially if insurance doesn't cover all the expenses for a replacement or repairs. On top of that, there's the loss of profits during the repair period for the airline and the closure of the runway, causing downtime for the airport while they sort out the aftermath. Safe Runway, a Swiss consulting firm, found that in 2019, the direct costs of incidents where airplanes veered off runways worldwide totaled over $4 billion. Besides what's already listed, this sum also covers insurance claims, investigations, and legal proceedings regarding why the airplane couldn't stop in time. That's why pilots worldwide follow this advice. If something seems off with the plane and you think takeoff or landing might not go smoothly, it's best to head towards EMAS. It saves lives and money. No need to explain why again, right? The problem is that systems like EMAS aren't widespread worldwide. In the US, they're only installed at the end of 121 runways in 71 airports. To put it in perspective, as of 2022, there were 5,193 public airports in the US, and we're not even talking about the rest of the world, where there might be just 2 or even 1 of these systems for an entire country. And if this info is still up to date, there are only 15 of these installations worldwide outside the US. Nevertheless, EMAS systems are in place and proven to be lifesavers. Yet oddly, some pilots seem to steer clear of them. Whether it's by accident or on purpose, they choose to guide their aircraft onto the grass beside the runway instead. The Airline Pilots Association says that this kind of thing doesn't happen often, and they can't figure out why. It doesn't really make sense if you think about it. There's a guaranteed way to keep passengers, planes, and the airport safe, so why aren't they using it? You dig a little deeper, you'll realize there's a myth. If you choose to drive on the grass instead of staying on the designated path as advised, then whatever happens won't get noticed. You won't end up in the news, so there won't be any scandal, reporters, or harm to your reputation, and so on. However, when asked why he veered into the grass, one pilot said he thought braking while turning right would be better, and he forgot about the EMAS. The question of whether it's actually possible to forget about it is still up in the air. Nevertheless, it's recommended for airlines to take steps to increase pilots' awareness of EMAS capabilities. Since these systems are very rare, not all pilots are even aware that such a thing exists. They simply rely on their experience to guide them. Although, in fact, EMAS is much safer than going sideways on the grass, but myths and lack of awareness are problems that have yet to be solved. You know, when you think about it and look at the situation from a different angle, the pilots might have a point. There are plenty of cases where EMAS helped planes stop so well that they're even listed on Wikipedia. But what about instances where planes stopped by rolling into the grass near the runway? That's something to consider. Hey, can you check if you've hit the like button? Just making sure. See you later.